Hey guys, it's Madison Estes. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the graphic novel Dying is Easy, written by Joe Hill and illustrated by Martin Simmons. Dying is Easy is about Syd Holms, an ex-cop turned stand-up comedian, because that's a logical career move, who ends up being suspected of homicide. The guy he's suspected of killing is Carl Dixon, a man whose name sounds like a mashup of random Walking Dead characters. Carl Dixon is a rival comedian who has many enemies because he steals material frequently, and his career is taking off. He's been invited to appear on late-night TV shows, so obviously there's a lot of people that are very angry at him because he's a thief and he's also very successful. Syd is one of the comedians whose material that Carl stole, and they get into it in the back alleyway, and Syd beats the crap out of Carl, but he leaves him alive. Carl is, smack-talking him and, imitating Syd, as Syd is walking away from him. But then the next day, Carl is dead and Syd is the number one suspect. The rest of this story is about Syd trying to avoid the police, avoid getting arrested, while trying to investigate the crime and find out who the real killer is to clear his name. This story is very much a gritty noir murder mystery. The cops aren't all good, there's morally gray characters, the city is a cesspool of crime. It's very much a textbook noir story. One of the things that I really love about this graphic novel is, despite the fact that it's a gritty noir story, the illustrations are so colorful. I would even say there's times where it's just downright beautiful. Despite the fact that it's about a murder mystery and it has this really dark tone, it's so colorful and almost gorgeous, and I just love the contrast between this really colorful artwork and this really dark story. I would say that the aesthetic is almost like cyberpunk, except for the fact that this isn't sci-fi and it doesn't take place in the future. It takes place within the 90s or the 80s. I want to say the 90s, but sometime within that time period. So it definitely doesn't have that sci-fi feel to it, but it definitely has, a very similar color scheme with the bright colors mixed with dark shadows. So one of the things that I really liked about this story is that there were a lot of twists. The first people that he suspects, surprise, surprise, end up not being the killers, but I really thought that the evidence was pretty damning against them, and I thought, okay, well, I guess the story is going to be about him tracking down these two people, but that wasn't the case. This is a whodunit mystery. There's a lot of different suspects, a lot of different motives, and the story really kept me guessing. In addition to the twists, I felt like there was a really good plot overall and a really good story. He's trying to convince the people closest to him that he's not the murderer, and he's also trying to avoid the police, which he has some connections to that are trying to track him down and find him to bring him in, presumably either to arrest him or to question him, while he's trying to find the actual killer. I felt like there was a really good balance between him trying to, evade the police like in a thriller, but also him trying to actually, piece together the mystery. So I really liked the story in this. Okay, so some of the things that I didn't like. The first thing I didn't like was the characters. I'm not the only person that kind of thought that some of the characters were a little bit unlikable. I don't think Syd was unlikable, I just never really liked him. I never really got attached to him. He's just your typical jaded cop, and he has some guilt over a case of his that didn't go the way he wanted it to, that, something terrible happened and he feels guilty for it. I felt like that could have been explored a little bit more, but, maybe Joe Hill is planning on exploring this character in future installments. I'm not sure based on the ending whether or not that's his plan, but it definitely feels like there's that possibility. And yet, I just, I don't have enough interest in this character to want to see it go forward. I felt like maybe if he had explored that character's guilt a little bit more within this comic, then maybe I would be more attached to the character. But as it was, he was a pretty flat character, and I don't think that there was enough development with any other character for me to get attached to them. And as much as I love the whodunit element and all of the twists, I also felt like if some of the other characters had been developed just a little bit more, that also would have made the whodunit element a little bit more exciting as well. As it was still fun to try to guess who it was, but whenever you're actually attached to some of the characters, it always makes it just a little bit better, because you're like, oh, I hope they're not the killer, and you kind of start to feel sympathy for some of the characters sometimes whenever, the characters are developed well enough in a whodunit story, and I just didn't feel like any of the characters in this were developed very well. One other thing that I didn't like, and this is kind of a small thing, but there was one part of the story where Syd breaks into his ex-wife's house and she holds him at gunpoint, and she's threatening him, and he mentioned something about how her father thinks that he turned her gay. He was making a joke because Syd makes jokes throughout the entire thing. He is a stand-up comedian after all. And she, in that moment, decides to start defending her sexuality and talking about how she was born gay and all this other stuff. And it just really took me out of the story because it felt so forced. It just felt like virtue signaling to me, either virtue signaling or just, you know, an author that just felt the need to, like, if I'm going to make a joke about how he turned her gay, I have to defend, you know, the idea that gay people are born gay, or, you know, that you can't turn someone gay. It's almost like he was afraid to make that joke, even though that's Syd's character. Like him or hate him, he kind of makes jokes that are inappropriate. And, you know, as an author, you have to kind of be able to stand by that. And, you know, by the fact that your character isn't perfect and it's not you that's saying these things, it's the character. Maybe that's what was going on, I don't know, but I just felt like that whole panel where she talks about how I was born this way, blah, 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 just really took me out of the moment because, you know, I honestly felt like she should have said, you know, let's stick to this moment or something. I don't know, just anything but that. It just was really weird to me. You know, again, she has the gun on her ex. It's this really tense moment. It's not the time to be talking about, you know, your sexuality and how you discovered that you were gay and blah, blah, blah. It just didn't fit that moment at all. And I really disliked that part because it just took me out of the story and I just felt like it was forced, like it was fake. It's one of those moments where I could not suspend my disbelief because I just didn't feel like that was genuine dialogue, that was something that the character in that moment would genuinely say. That was a really small moment though, and throughout the rest of the comic I felt like the dialogue was, for better or worse, pretty believable, pretty genuine, and, you know, entertaining. So since this is a graphic novel, I feel like you need to rate the artwork and the story separately. The artwork in this case gets a solid 5 out of 5 stars. I thought that it was beautiful, I thought that it was different. You know, whenever you hear noir murder mystery, you usually think dark colors, black and white, and this was the complete opposite of that. It was bright and beautiful, at times bright, you know, sometimes it was dark, but, you know, it was always colorful, it was always beautiful. I absolutely loved it. 5 out of 5 stars. So I'm not entirely sure what I would give this story. I kind of go back and forth between 3 out of 5 and 4 out of 5 stars. There isn't anything seriously wrong with the story. Again, I felt like some of the characters were a little bit underdeveloped and I wasn't super attached to any of them. I don't think I would care to see any of them in a future story, but I didn't dislike any of the characters, and again, I didn't feel like there was any serious flaws in this story. So, story combined with the artwork, I feel like I would go ahead and give the graphic novel as a whole a 4 out of 5 stars. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On this channel, I post reviews, writing advice, horror commentary, and vlogs. And I just edited a horror anthology called Roadkill 6 Texas Horror by Texas Writers. I'll include a link for this in the description box below if you want to check it out. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you later.